Hello, I'm Minister Randy Griffin, and I have the honor of navigating you through a journey 25 years in the making. This year, we are celebrating Bishop Dwayne C. Debnam's 25th anniversary as pastor of Morning Star Baptist Church of Baltimore County. Psalm 40, verse 5 celebrates the amazing things the Lord has done. In fact, the scripture suggests, were we to tell of them, they would be too many to declare. Tonight, we will hear from Bishop Debnam, his life, his journey, his words by God's design. Welcome to Amazing, a reflective look back. After the congregation's August 8, 1996 confirmation of what the Lord had predestined, Reverend Debnam had to prepare to preach his first sermon as pastor-elect.
When you think about the first sermon as pastor-elect, September 8th, 1996. Up until that moment, my sermon writing pattern or habit had been, I can get it done in a couple weeks or so. If I'm going out on the road to preach, I'll doctor up an old sermon just to tell it to the context that I'll be preaching to. But that moment was so unique, so different, because the couple things you want to make sure you did it with that first sermon. Number one, you wanted to, and this is the natural, you want to make sure they were impressed with the preaching in that moment. So you want to make sure that they left that service on that first Sunday saying, okay, he's the right one. But at the same time, and this was also crucial in my thinking, I remember back those 25 years, is this: they called me for who I am. So what I have to do is make sure I stick to who I am in the preaching moment. If they were encouraged, empowered by the sermon that I preached as a candidate, and that's who I was, they'll be impressed by the sermon, encouraged rather, and hope by the sermon that I preach as the pastor-elect on that first Sunday. And so going through my mind with all those thoughts, number one, would persons come to church on that Sunday? How would the congregation feel? Would they still wonder, should they call somebody else? Or the persons in the sanctuary on that Sunday saying, I should have been the pastor, because when I came here, there were about 8 associate ministers already on staff here. So I'm sure many of them had candidated and wondered how come they weren't chosen. So they were sitting there carefully critiquing the sermon that I was preaching. That was in my mind. But at the same time, I think one of the things I really held close to on that Sunday was preach a sermon that begins to set a new foundation for the ministry of the Morning Star Church. Where is it that they need to go in these next 100 years? Because when I came to Morning Star on that September 8th, 1996, they were celebrating, I guess I could say we were celebrating our 100th year as church. And so I was coming to an established church, an established ministry, while at the same time, I knew I had to help reestablish a foundation, or build upon a foundation that had already been laid out for 100 years. And so going through my mind on that Sunday morning, even in preparation for that moment, was preach a sermon that's going to help build up or help establish rather a stronger foundation, but at the same time, preach a sermon that's going to arouse some curiosity as to where they can go from here.
Often when a new pastor is called to a church, he or she does not come alone. Bishop Debnam was a son, a husband, and a father.
When I came to Morning Star, of course, I was married, had been married for quite some time, had 2 children already, Corey and Joel. What's interesting about that, now, of course, Joel was at that time, this is 2021, Joel was 33 now, I've been here 25 years, so she's about 8 years old. She had her friends at New Psalmist. She and Joshua Thomas were best of buddies. Those two created somehow these businesses together, all these plans, ideas they had. So she was embedded firmly in the New Psalmist Church. She and her friend, her good buddy, Lady Carla, was, of course, a part of the New Psalmist Church. Corey, at that time, was making his way through high school and all. But after being here, I guess a couple years, Lady Carla is with child now, and Jared is on the way. And I remember clearly the church had planned for her a baby shower. Saturday afternoon was her baby shower. She was going to be here. Church was going to celebrate her. Well, on the Friday, late Friday, Carla decides she's going in labor with Mr. Jared. He's ready to come. And so with Gerald, we said, no, wait a minute. Her baby shower's tomorrow. She's in labor today. And so, of course, we go to the hospital. They say, oh yeah, she's about ready to deliver. She's at the hospital on Friday night, Saturday. And so what happened was we knew she wasn't quite ready to deliver, but she was going to deliver. I snuck away from the hospital for a few moments to come to the church, because I wanted the church to know that the reason why she wasn't there at the baby shower, it was funny. And I'm trying to remember if I told them that she was in labor. Yeah, I must have told her that she was in labor. She hadn't had Jared yet, but Jared was pretty close to being here. And so it's just interesting that the time when Jared has always been, or rather done things on his own time schedule. Here's another moment where Jared's gonna say, I'm coming, and they can plan his baby shower if I want, but hey, I'm on my way. When I came to Morning Star, my mother was a member at New Psalmist, had been there for over 15, maybe 20 years. My father was a member of the Great Bedside Baptist Church. And so shortly thereafter, of course, she changed her membership from New Psalmist. He made his way to the Morning Star over the first few years. Now, one of the things that I learned quickly about pastoring my parents was that they were going to remind you, at least my mother was going to remind me often, I'm still your mother boy. So that there was some things that I could share with her as pastor, but she would quickly remind me, you still my son. Pastoring your parents becomes, it's fun, it's interesting, it's a great journey because you're really not really pastoring them. They are more of us in support of you than you are pastoring them. They're members of the church, but you look out to the congregation, both of them would sit on my left-hand side out, Winners Lane building, and they're paying attention, but they're praying you through. And so you appreciate the support that they brought every Sunday. Although I was called their pastor, they were more here in support of me than anything else, and I appreciated that.
Bishop had served as the assistant to the pastor at New Psalmist Baptist Church for 5 years prior to being called to Morning Star. At New Psalmist, he was a part of a major infrastructure. They had recently completed a building project, and the church was ministering to thousands of individuals each week.
One of the realities of being called the pastor in 1996 and shifting from New Psalmist, where I was on staff, the assistant to the pastor, we had a staff of probably at that time, New Psalmist, 15, 20 persons. I come to Morning Star, and our staff consisted of course, myself, Gloria Scribner was our church administrator, Grant Gilliam was our facilities manager, IT director, and whatever else we needed him to do, and then Dwight. Dwight was our sexton who was working in church at that time. So that comprised our staff at that time. And so coming here made me realize, okay, most of this stuff that has to get done, I got to figure out how to get it done. I don't have a discipleship lead. I don't have a Christian education lead. I don't have a minister of music on full-time staff. And so one of the things I had to do initially was to figure out administratively how in the world we're going to function. Because I had to now figure out, we weren't quite ready to build a staff, had to work with the staff that we had. We had strong staff here, but everyone was doing 10 to 15 different things at the same time. Gloria was overseeing the church, my schedule, the church calendar, when persons met throughout the day, where they met. Grant was taking care of the facilities and our IT needs, make sure our computers are functioning. And then Dwight was make sure the building and the campus was kept up to par. And so it was a major adjustment trying to figure out how to get things structured over time. So those first 3 to 4 years were all about building the structure. How to, what is that, laying the vision out and getting persons in place to help facilitate the vision. Officers played a strong role in that time, but we had to learn how to build the structure and the infrastructure to function as church and get a vision, take it from, of course, its small stage to a position of a reality. When we look at these 25 years of ministry and what has helped shape the way I pastor, what's helped shape the way my thinking and even my theology, there's so many what I want to call critical moments in this 25-year journey. You think of things like 9/11 event. You think of the moments when President Obama was elected. You think of this pandemic that we're currently in. All of those moments have played a role in shaping how I do ministry. Why? Because it forced me, it created the opportunity for me rather, to guide persons through a journey that was also unfamiliar for myself. It was unfamiliar to guide persons through the event that happened on September 11th. It was unfamiliar to guide persons through a black man becoming president. That may seem like a happy moment, which it was, but it was also about making sure persons were able to channel their emotions and have realistic expectations. Sometimes in church culture, persons have unrealistic expectations when certain things happen, and it causes them to stray away from some of the tenets of the faith. They see something great happen and think that they reached a aha moment. So that moment was crucial. When we look at these last 18, 19, or some would say 18, 19, 20, 21 months, it's been a major shift in ministry, been a major challenge for ministry. And of course, for me personally, it's not only guiding the church through, but it's also guiding myself through. We never imagined having to deal with a crisis of this magnitude. And the question that we raised initially is to the question that we have 19, 20 months into this pandemic is not only when will it end or how long will it last, but how will we keep persons focused and engaged in this season. One of the most difficult things that we had to do in this season, I had to do in this season, was to find ways to make sure persons remain engaged, interested, connected, and supportive of ministry. Sometimes when persons aren't allowed to continue in a particular norm, that norm is replaced by a habit. And so one of the things we had to do in this season was to make sure that the new norms of our day were not allowed to become habits that replaced what were the norms, if that makes sense. For instance, coming to church, participating in ministry, being engaged in a ministry activity were norms for persons that was quickly snatched away from them. And now, with the world opening back up, persons have created new habits. New opportunities have come their way. And so now one of my challenges is, how do I make sure the persons do not allow habits that have been created in the last 19 to 20 months become the norms that replaced what had been norms. For instance, it had been normal for persons to worship on Sundays, but now persons have created new habits. They're doing brunch on Sunday morning, they're sleeping in late, they're doing worship literally from the bed. We used to joke about persons being members of Bedside Baptist. Now that's a reality that is so true to so many persons. They're literally doing worship in their beds. Many of you, as you watch this right now, you're in your bed right now doing worship. And so what challenge we have to overcome is, how do we get persons to recognize the significance and the value of doing worship in the worship center? What's the value? Because persons said, I can do worship at home right now. I can do worship in my basement. Yes, that's true. However, there's something about the connections that you have inside the worship center. So a challenge that I've had that's really shaping ministry in this season is how do we get persons to recognize the significance and the value of doing worship in a place where we learn to shout, we learn to speak in tongues, we learn to sing, we learn to share, and we establish relationships. Now let me footnote for a second, because oftentimes, especially in this season, we've forgotten that the relationships that we have, many of them were established in the church. And so now many persons have a difficult time establishing new relationships. And so how do we get persons to come back and understand the value, the significance of this? So now, you heard me talk about this quite a few times. We're now the physical church. Some persons will say we're now the virtual church, meaning we have of course an in-person option, but we have a strong virtual presence. And so how do we balance the two of those? In my mind, we have to make sure that what we're doing is teaching persons the value of both, which means you've got to make room in your life to be a part of the in-person church, while at the same time, some things will be forever a part of the virtual church, but it's a blending of the two. So we're shaping ministry right now in a way that many of us never thought we would have to. So it's a new dilemma. It's a new shift that we didn't expect, and one that we, quite frankly, many persons have not embraced yet, that the church is now functioning literally on two strong platforms. And so an event, we talk about an event that shaped ministry. This is an event that is still shaping ministry, because we're not totally sure as to what all the turns are yet. And so how do we make sure that we are doing enough research, study, understanding what ministry is like in this new season?
Shaping ministry, building a staff, but in the midst of it all, ministry then and now would be about valuing people.
One of the most crucial lessons in pastoring is valuing people. Everybody brings to the table a different set of gifts, a different skill set, and most importantly, a different historical background as to why they bring what they bring to the table. And so what pastoring teaches you to do is to learn how to value people for what they bring to the table. They may not bring the greatest gifts always. They may not bring the strongest spirit or attitude, but they bring something. And what it rose as pastor is to identifying why this person has been brought into your space. Every person has been brought into your space for some specific reason. It's up to you to figure out what's that reason, and then use them in the best possible way to get the most out of them, and at the same time allow them to see they have value. There have been so many persons over these years of ministry who have played what some would say small roles. I remember a line that Thomas Ramsey shared with me. I'll never forget. He says, when he has to answer a question, and the question may not be what you want, his great line will be, I wish I could tell you something different, but this is what it is. William McCoy, who was a deacon, made a deacon here early in my ministry, his great role was after I finished preaching, he would grab the preacher's cape. In those days, we wore capes after we finished preaching. He would grab the cape, bring it to the pulpit, and put it around my shoulders. And he loved doing that. It helped him see that he had role of significance, and it also allowed the membership to see that we take care of the persons that God places in and around us. There have been so many persons who have played critical roles, but the key is this: as pastor, you have to make sure that people learn to value people.
Okay, let's go back a few years. The Bible says, write the vision and make it plain. The Lord had given Morning Star's pastor the vision: enlarge your territory. The ministry's current physical space was simply too small. 3 worship services were filled to capacity. The spiritual growth program had long outgrown the main building, and classes were held in houses along Winters Lane. but fulfilling the vision would not come without a struggle.
When we first started getting the inkling, the vision that the present physical space that we had would not be our home much longer, one of the things I wrestled with for months was, is this what I wanted to do? Because I'd been through a building project at New Psalmist, and I've seen the mental, the emotional, the physical, and the spiritual stretching that's required to make that happen. Building a new building with persons on faith is not always a pastor's first choice. You try for so long to make it work where you are. Many persons do. Some quickly jump out and say, okay, let's do this. I was not that person. I was the one who said, let's try to figure out how we can make this work where we are. But then it came to the point where we knew we could no longer stay in that building. And so the easy thing to do was to, we got this parking lot across the street. We purchased all this land up and down Winners Lane. Let's just put it all together, make it work. We can just build across the street. It'd be such an easy move. We don't have to worry about transitioning persons 5, 10, 20 miles around the corner somewhere. We can just build across the street. That would have made it so easy, so convenient. And of course, we started on that journey trying to build directly across from where we are. But then we hit this major roadblock where the community made it quite clear. Listen, your church, the church that you all want to build, is not what we want in our community. We're accustomed to a certain amount of traffic flow, accustomed to a certain amount of persons being in this neighborhood, and what you're projecting is, we don't want this. And let me be honest, that was a very difficult pill to swallow, because I knew a lot more than what they knew, the value the Morning Star brought to that Winners Lane community. I knew the economic resource that we were. I knew that our traffic in that community prevented other activities from going on in a big way. So I knew what would happen or could happen potentially if we left. They had built themselves as being a strong African-American community. But as I was observing the neighborhood, I saw the neighborhood changing. It was changing from a predominantly African-American neighborhood to a Hispanic neighborhood. And I knew that we left, what would happen was there would be a major turnover in that community. But I'll go back. It still hurt to hear in the community meetings, to receive the letters from community persons saying, we don't want this church in our community. Imagine being an African-American church in an African-American community that's always been an African-American community that was built up. There used to be plantations where we were. That's where Rolling Road comes from, plantation, rolling down the street, down the road rather, knowing that community does not want you to build a church. And then to add insult to injury, and I'm just being transparent, when they gathered forces of white political influencers to help support their argument. So now we got black persons fighting a black church, but yet they team up with white politicians to say, yeah, we don't want y'all here. Okay, so we bit the bullet. We saw what they did not want. We had begun our plans building there. We hired an architect. Architectural plans were being made, had been developed. And so they sued us. Some of you know that, or some of you may not know that they sued us saying, we don't want y'all here. That's how bad we don't want you here. We take y'all to court. Now, what's interesting is they didn't have any money to sue us, but you don't have to have money to sue nobody. You just have to, we had to defend ourselves. And so, long story, community, politicians supported the effort. And at some point we said, okay, y'all don't want us here. God has a place for us.
That's a story that should be documented as a reminder that God's plans cannot be stopped. If He said it, He'll do it. To God be the glory.
One of the, I guess you could say, obvious and not so obvious faith moves we had to make in this season of ministry is, of course, building this campus. The decisions that had to be made, the faith moves that had to be taken. Again, we were comfortable on Winner's Lane, at least I was comfortable on Winner's Lane. Why? Because there was no mortgage, the expenses weren't as high, and it was easy. But there are moments in pastoral ministry when God says, I need you to model for the people what you preach about. And so we said yes with, of course, some hesitation, I'll admit it. It was not the easiest decision to make, because it was easy to stay on Winner's Lane. When we first began looking for a location to move after it became clear that we could not continue the building efforts on Winner's Lane, we began looking for locations, and I'm going to say we literally stumbled upon this site over here on Security Boulevard, Woodlawn Drive. I was driving past, saw the land, and just inquired about it. We had our real estate guy look into it and came back with the answer that yes, the sellers were interested in selling the building or selling the land. And for those who don't know, they wanted to sell us the entire Chevrolet, I'll say, campus, both showrooms, body shop, the vacant lots. They wanted to sell us everything. And we would have loved to have had it all, but we could not afford it all. So we bit off what we thought we could handle, and what also required faith also. The two buildings, the existing buildings were on land, the empty lot, and that was going to cost a pretty hefty penny at that time. And so we said yes, and history has been created. We look at this site now, the campus that we're on. We always knew that God wanted us to build a campus and not just a new sanctuary building, but a campus where persons could go from building to building, learning and seeing. It's not just the buildings that they would see, it's the faith that they would see as they went from building to building, seeing what God did. God shared with us what each building could and would be used for. Of course, the vacant lot is where we knew we had to build the new sanctuary. It was more than enough land to do that. The first building on Security Boulevard, the Renaissance Center, that it also afforded us the opportunity to have a large conference room area. Now that has come into become a major blessing. We've had worship services over there. We've had weddings over there. All types of things have occurred in that building because of the space and the multi-use of it. Renaissance Center is housed there, dance studio, of course, the conference room, and some staff offices located in that building also. And it's also afforded us the opportunity to serve the community in a large way. The body shop building now being renovated for Family Life Center activities. It's a campus. It's not just a building. It's a campus where persons can come, young persons can come, seniors can come. Despite what age you are, there's something on this campus that can empower you, strengthen you, and allow you to see what God can do. Every time I walk from building to building, what I see is what God can do. I see more than just the buildings. I see more than the parking spaces. I see what faith in God can do. And what I encourage every member to do, when you walk from building to building on this campus, you go from site to site, imagine, see for yourself, this is what God has done. God has given us the privilege, the opportunity to show what faith in Him will do. So we're on this campus now. I'm loving it. Of course, we're waiting to be able to use it in full capacity when this pandemic is over. But hey, God has done what God said He would do.
Are you being blessed? What an amazing journey. Expanding the ministry in Catonsville, the Renaissance Center, some 80 thriving ministry programs, the Woodlawn campus, the CDC, ministry integrity, impact, influence, and change lives.
So one of our jobs, one of our roles is to help persons to see their potential. In my 25 years of pastoral ministry here, we have licensed over 120 persons to preach. We've had well over 100 persons ordained into diaconate leadership. And many of those persons never imagined that God would use them in those capacities. That they knew that they loved God, they knew that they enjoyed being a part of a house of worship or congregation rather. But what they did not always know was the place, the potential that God had placed inside of them. And so one of my roles is to help persons to see their potential, see their possibilities. My uncle used to have a great phrase. He used to say, I'm a possibility, I'm a promise, I'm potential. We have to make persons see the promise that's in them, the potential that God has given to them, and all the possibilities. And sometimes as you go about as far as diaconate ministry is concerned, identifying persons to help you carry forth vision. Diaconate persons are not just persons who make decisions, but they are a person who help you carry the weight of ministry and help bring vision to reality. They're persons whom you can have conversations with, share with them what God is saying, and then task them to help the people see it. As pastor, we can't touch every member. So we have persons in place who can help us be an extension of ourselves, help us touch those members. And so as they're sitting in pews, as they're sitting in discipleship classes, as they're singing on choir, their role is not just to sing or sit, but it's also to share. And sometimes you share ministry, you share vision, not solely by talking about it, by being excited about what currently is. You share new vision by helping persons see what else God can do, and also showing your excitement about what God currently is doing. So diaconate ministry preaches, it's about empowering them to help other persons see. And that's been a joy in these 25 years. Another pleasure of pastoral ministry, especially as you're shaping and you're helping preachers fulfill their role in the kingdom, is when God calls them to their own congregation. And you get to sit in that moment with them, walk them through the season of interviewing, walk them through the season of applying, walk them through the season of preparing for installation and their first Sunday. One of the joys of doing that is you're seeing fruit grow. You're seeing seeds that you have planted grow, bud, blossom. And we have persons out right now around the city, around this country, as a matter of fact, whose ministries were birthed here at Morning Star. But now they're out pastoring their own congregation, pastoring their own flocks. And what you get to see when you go visit them is to see parts of what was taking place at Morning Star, the things that blessed them, the things that helped shape them. And you're seeing them use them in their own congregations. And that's a joy within itself, seeing persons value what you put into them, value what you value, now use it to build ministries, to grow persons, allow them to see, hey, God is about the same work, he just does it in different venues. And so we're seeing that in our sons and our daughters in ministry who are out there doing great jobs, proud of them all, proud of the fact that God has gifted them, and he allowed our paths to cross at critical seasons rather in their life where we needed them, I needed them, they needed us, and we blended, we grew.
Do you ever look back over your life and reflect upon what you've learned? Bishop does. He also thanks and appreciates those who have helped shape his journey with wisdom and inspiration.
Every pastor who is wise always keeps themselves in position to receive from others. I'm 25 years into pastoral ministry. I'm 37 years into preaching ministry, and I still hold in high esteem my pastor will always be my pastor. Why? Because I honor him, I respect him for the gift that he is and what God has poured into him to pour into me. And so when 25 years ago when I came into Morning Star, I had been on the staff at the New Psalmist Church, serving, sharing, being shaped and prepared for this ministry. So I am always indebted to my pastor to this day. Whenever he calls, I answer. I will never ignore his calls. I answer his calls. I respond to his requests. Whatever his needs are, I do my best to respond to. Why? Because that's the voice that God has given to me to use as a path for ministry. So he'll always be integral and significant in my ministerial journey. In addition, Bishop Ashley McKenzie, when I was at Howard University School of Divinity, gave me the opportunity to intern at her church, to share preaching platforms so many times. So I'm also indebted to her for the door she opened, opportunity she gave me at the Oak Street Church over there on Howard Street many, many years ago. So I'm thanking God for her. In particular, thank God for my pastor, Bishop Walter Scott Thomas, Sr.
Bishop is also a mentor. He shared these reflections for individuals who feel they've been called to pastoral ministry.
Yeah, for somebody who believes they're called to pastor, I would share with them quite a few things. I'll start here. Number one, make sure that you're doing this because God called you and not because you want a platform. There's so many persons who want to be in pastoral ministry because they need a platform for their ego. That's not going to do well in pastoral ministry. Make sure that this is what God wants for you. It's not what you want for yourself because you think you can do what you see somebody else do. Someone shared with me many years ago, make the statement to me that what you do seems to be very, very easy. Well, it may seem that way to some from the outside looking in, but it's far from it. And if you think it's easy because from what you see, it may be because you don't really see it. You don't really see what it takes to serve, to share in pastoral ministry. I would also encourage persons to do this. When you think that God's calling you to pastor, be patient. Don't rush and apply for every church that has a vacancy. I know some persons who every time there's a vacancy, they apply to any church, which means you're just looking for a platform. You're not praying over, is this for me? You're looking for a place where your ego can be filled. Be patient. And the Bible says your gift will make room for you. Share with you my personal story. I had applied a couple other churches in the city of Baltimore. Did not get called there. I was always one of two final candidates to a couple different churches. And in hindsight, I'm so glad I didn't get called to either of those churches because it would not have been a good fit for me and probably not a good fit for that church. Morning Star is where God had prepared for me to serve, positioned me to serve, and had plans for me to prosper. And so I'm thanking God for being here, but it's about being patient and not rushing to gain a platform. In this season, I share this with young preachers, in this season, so many young preachers just want to do what they see because they see what they think is the fruit. They see what they think are the benefits, not knowing that to have some of the benefits that some pastors had, it's taken years. Here, little illustration, little joke. I remember when I got my first tailor-made suit, it was years after I started preaching. These days, some persons think that there's some things they should have immediately because they're the preacher. Some things come over time. And so, young preachers, be patient. Don't want everything right now. Take your time. And the Bible is true. Your gifts will make room for you.
An awesome preacher, teacher, and as trustee Bernie Rubottom declared, a good man. What a man. Bishop has blessed men, women, young adults, children, and youth from all over the world. He calls it the ministry of presence.
Pastoral ministry entails more than just preaching, more than the desk work, administrative work, but it's also about maintaining a sensitivity to people, their needs, their hurts, their pains, and their wants. And one of the things that we have to do in the pastoral role is recognize that God has positioned us in these roles as pastors to give oversight, to give direction, to bring healing to persons in some rough moments. Every pastor goes through seasons where you lose members who were dear to you. You lose family members. You had to watch persons wrestle with sickness and unforeseen circumstances. And so what our role is to give some level of comfort. One of the great lines that I learned early on in ministry, not just pastoral ministry, but ministry, was that we offer what I want to call the ministry of presence. So sometimes persons are strengthened not always by what you say, but by you just being there. Because you don't always know exactly what to say, but you do know that your presence there brings a level of strength, a level of stability, a level of calmness. Our role is to, when we walk into a hospital room with somebody, recognize there's a serious situation going on, not to add chaos to it, but to bring some calmness to it. I tell our preachers who go with me to hospital visits all the time, listen, we go in this room, you have to be the anchor. You can't go in there crying all over the place. I know you want to, I know you're hurt. You can do that after we leave the room. But when we go in that room, we're there to bring calmness, stability, and anchoring to this particular family. They're already hurting. They're already wounded. And so what we have to do is learn what's our role. Our role is to anchor. Our role is to bring calm. Our role is to have a presence. Yeah, we'll cry out the family at the appropriate moment, but there's also moments when they need to see our stability. And so we give them that. But it's difficult when you're also dealing with your own crisis at times. I remember having to bury my father, bury my mother, bury my daughter-in-law, and then stand and preach that Sunday morning and give the person some direction, some anchoring, and some strength, because they're watching me to see how I'm handling this situation so that they'll know what to do, what not to do when a similar situation comes their way. And so our role is, again, I would say the ministry of presence is crucial.
They say you should love what you do. This is Bishop's testimony.
Yeah, I really do enjoy what I do. I know this is what God has called me to do. I enjoy it, and what's weird about it is you're always learning something. In here at Morning Star, I came to Morning Star, we had literally 3 persons on staff. 25 years later, we've reached over 70 plus persons on our staff. And managing those persons is unique, because as pastor, there are times you have to be spiritual leader, but there's also times when you have to be CEO. You have to be major decision maker, and you have to know which role you are functioning in at any given moment. When I walk at the staff meeting, I'm functioning as a CEO. When I leave staff meeting, I'm sitting at my desk, I'm serving the role of spiritual leader. You have to know which role at any given moment you have to be in. So you change hats frequently. But what it allows you to do what you do and give God honor at the same time is understanding, as Moses did out there in the wilderness, which role am I playing? Jethro told him, hey man, you need some person to hold up your arms. And so that's a business decision. But it's also times you have to make spiritual decisions. You just have to know which one you're making at any given time.
We couldn't miss an opportunity to hear Bishop's reflections on the Discipleship program. It's graduated thousands and was one of the initial programs Bishop introduced at the church when he arrived in 1996.
When I came here to when to start 25 years ago, one of the ministries I knew I was going to begin here, because it was a key part of what I did at the New Psalmist Church, and that was the discipleship ministry. Discipleship, I believe, 25 years later, is the hub of ministry, because it's in discipleship that persons learn really is who God is, how God wants to use them, and what God has equipped them with to be used in the kingdom. Go back to the journey that Jesus shared with his original 12. He allowed them to see ministry. He says, come and see, come walk with me, come be with me. Come and see what this ministry journey is all about. My role as pastor is to always invite persons on the journey. When I preach, I'm inviting you on a journey. When I'm teaching Bible study, I'm inviting you on a journey. When I'm sitting in a meeting with you, I'm inviting you on a journey. I'm not just asking you to do this or do that. I'm inviting you on a journey to discover who God is. And so discipleship it starts in the classroom for some persons, but it goes well beyond the classroom. It goes well beyond the books, experiencing God or growing in Christ. It's about making sure that you are on this journey to spiritual wholeness with God. That's what Jesus did. He took those initial disciples, Peter, James, John, all of them, and said, listen, come and be with me. Come and walk with me on this journey to experience who God is, what God wants to do in your life, and the gifts that God's given to you to use on this journey. And so discipleship 25 years later is still a core piece of ministry, especially for persons who understand that God wants to do more with them than just sing a song, preach a sermon, but He wants to use them. And so to be used, you have to make sure that you are going on a journey. It's like a sermon. I tell persons when we talk about how to craft sermons, sermons are about telling a story and inviting persons on a journey with you. How do I get from the person that I am to the person who God wants me to be? What are the turns on the road that I need to make? What are the experiences that will be a benefit to me? Discipleship is about accepting the call to go on a journey with God to spiritual wholeness and spiritual maturity.
He takes this journey seriously, and in the midst of it all, he also finds opportunities to relax.
Yeah, ministry is not something that you do haphazardly. Here's why. Somebody's life is always on the line. The decision that they have to make tomorrow is impacted by what you share with them today. And so what we have to learn to do, those of us who are in ministry, pastoral ministry, you're a preacher, a central preacher, you're a leader, you have to understand this. Every decision the persons have to make is somehow connected to what you say or don't say and how serious you take a moment. When I stand behind the desk, I recognize that they're ears that are about to hear, eyes that are about to see. They're about to see God in a way they've never seen God before. And I've got to make sure that the way God is illustrated, the way God is represented, is a way that God is pleased, but also in a way that empowers the people. We can't afford to ever take lightly people's lives. In this day and age, persons are dealing with so much. It's not just the pandemic. It's family crisis and job situations, money problems, it's health issues. We've got to make sure that we're giving them the answers to life, because quite frankly, folk are coming to church not to see you or hear from you. They're coming to receive directions from God. And we have to understand that we are the mouthpiece for God in any given moment. When I stand and there's a family grieving on that second row in the sanctuary, they are grappling with, why did this happen? How do I keep going on now? What happens with my life now? And so we've got to make sure that we're giving them direction, hope, and answers. Paul said it this way, woe is me if I preach not the gospel of Jesus Christ. In other words, it's my responsibility to make sure that persons, when they leave this worship experience, they leave with something they can live on. Not just something they'll shout on in service and forget about what it was by the time they get home, but something they can take with them when they leave go home, sit with it, wrestle with it, and watch this. Still are able to taste it throughout the week because it made impact. And that's what we do in ministry. One of the things I take with me every day is this. In order to preach on Sunday, prepare to preach on Sunday and teach, you have to always give God a fresh mind. You cannot give God a tired mind and expect God to get major results out of us. And so I think it's crucial, and all of us need to do this a little bit more. Find avenues, find paths to unwind. These days, so somehow, as I've gotten over 50, I've fallen in love with golf. Golf, I wish I played golf in high school. Because I think it's for me, I can go out and play 18, 36 holes of golf by myself. Because I unwind. You're out there with just you and the golf ball and golf club and just enjoy it. I still enjoy sports. Also, this pandemic has not allowed me to do as much as I would like to, but that was a season where I was getting massages every week because it unwinds me, it relaxes me, gets the knots out. Because those are the things that take your mind away from the stressors that you have to deal with when you come back to your real world. So we have to find opportunities to do that. Hanging out, watching. For some reason, I love watching old shows, Different World, Matlock, Cosby Show, Fresh Prince. Why? Because they don't remind me of the present times that we're dealing with. I read about enough crime, I hear enough crime on news. So when I go home, I want to watch something that's not going to remind me totally of what I'm dealing with in the real world. The violence, the crimes, the shootings. And so that's how I unwind. I sit back, find me something that's funny. I can watch the same Fresh Prince, Different World shows over and over again. Hogan's Heroes. I know the plot, but they're relaxing. The only thing, golf is what I do a lot of these days because, hey, I love the game, I'm competitive, but it's also relaxing. Well, Dwayne, young Dwayne, let me begin by telling you that the plans that God has for your life are going to amaze you. It's not totally what you thought you would be doing, but the plan that God had for your life is going to simply blow your mind. As a matter of fact, you're going to make impact beyond your wildest imagination. There's so many things that I want to share with you and say to you as you drift through your early days in life wondering if dreams do come true. What I want you to know is they do. And not only do dreams come true, but God gives you more than you dream. God gives you more than you dream. Dwayne, I remember when you would sit under the kitchen table trying to figure out where you would go in life, because under the kitchen table was your safe place and your thinking place. Even back then, your introverted ways had you discovering life while thinking underneath the kitchen table. At the same time, you were wondering, where would this journey called life take you? Well, let me tell you, life is going to take you places and put you in reach of people that you never imagined would be in your circle. And it's interesting as I pen these words to you, Dwayne, that where you are making your greatest impact is not where you ever thought you would be. You have gone further and into different spaces of life than where you thought you would be going. You've been thinking that you would somehow make it in professional sports. Great dream, but that doesn't happen. Your life is so much bigger than that. And so as you go through high school and begin thinking about what's next, I know that you've asked yourself this question 1,000 times. How will I make it? Yes, you will have a child, a son in high school. Both you yourself and your son are doing well. Your parents helped you to manage that critical moment in your life. It was overwhelming, but you came through it. So Dwayne, I know that you were often worried about life growing up. You were often uncertain about the path that you would take. I do want to let you know that even though you chose not to go to Calvert Hall on that basketball scholarship, and it seemed like the right decision at that time, but years later, you'll discover that not accepting that scholarship did not mess you up. Because even though you would spend years wondering if it was a bad choice, God had a plan for your life, a dream for your life that was bigger than any you could ever have for yourself. And oh yeah, Dwayne, I know that it hurt you tremendously, even though you tried to laugh it off. It hurt you when that teacher made you write on that chalkboard that Dwayne Debnam was a fool. Well, you proved her wrong. You were hurt, but you kept pressing. Thank you, Dwayne, for having the mental strength to keep pressing. Now, Dwayne, some things that you saw and experienced that you wondered how they would impact you or if they would ever catch up to you. Remember those times when you would have to help your grandfather get home after one of his drinking binges, and you wondered, since alcoholism ran in the family, would that too become your life? Let me thank you for not falling into that temptation. I can also tell you now that as you go through life, it seems like that you will be in one of the circles with the least amount of potential and the one who will wrestle with the thought, am I good enough? That thought is going to motivate you to work hard. But know this, every door that you need opened and every opportunity that God has for you will not be denied. You will not go through the same doors as some of your closest friends, but your impact will not be questioned. As a matter of fact, it's going to surprise you that you will become what you never expected. You are going to become a preacher. Go figure that. A pastor, a church leader. Know that this was not on your radar, and that's why that scholarship was turned down. Makes sense now, doesn't it? Dwayne, let me go back for a second and tell you this. You are good enough. And here's a word of advice. Don't go through life comparing yourself to anybody. You're good enough. I know that you will at oftentimes doubt yourselves. You will doubt if you're good enough. You will doubt if you're liked. You will doubt if you can succeed. You will doubt if you can handle the weight of your journey. Dwayne, be patient with yourself. Your mother often told you that Rome was not built in a day. Don't doubt yourself. Be patient. Here's something major that I want you to know. God is going to send into your life at a place you would not have gone if you had taken that basketball scholarship. God's going to send into your life a beautiful woman who will love you, care for you, anchor you, and become your best friend, while also becoming the mother of your children. Dwayne, always cherish the people in your life. And although you are an introvert, God is going to do something in your life that is simply amazing. Cherish your relationships and try not to allow your shyness to keep you from embracing people and opportunities that will come your way. A few more things I think you should know about you. Oftentimes, you are going to want things to happen quickly. But as I remind you or mentioned to you a few moments ago, be patient. God is going to allow you to create a story that when you look back, you will be amazed that this is the Dwayne who grew up in East Baltimore, This is the Dwayne who had to sell his blood to eat while in college. This is the Dwayne who thought he made mistakes that will haunt him forever. This is the Dwayne who did not think he was good enough. Dwayne, you are good enough. And Dwayne, you will do well.
His life, his journey, his words by God's design. This is the amazing journey of our pastor, Bishop Dwayne C. Debnam, a man who God has used to transform lives, build disciples, empower communities, and inspire authentic worship. God bless you.